The Indian Air Force is angry. The object of their anger seems to be the state of affairs at the state-owned Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, which is India's only fighter jet manufacturer. Now, a conversation between Air Chief Marshal Amanpreet Singh and HAL officials at Aero India has gone viral. Now, the Air Chief was heard pulling up HAL officials for the slow delivery of the light combat aircraft, TEJAS. The Air Force has ordered 83 LCA Mark 1A TEJASs in 2021. It has still not received the first aircraft. Why has the IAF lost its patience with India's only fighter jet manufacturer? Are the IAF's dreams of countering the Pakistan and Chinese air forces held hostage by slow delivery of aircraft? What's the way out? I'm joined today by Air Marshal Diptendu Chaudhary and Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus show. I want to start by asking you this, AVM Bahadur. Define the problem for us. How critical are the Air Force's squadron numbers at currently? Are we looking at the smallest Indian Air Force since the 1962 war with China, and how does it impact our strategy?
Thanks, Sandeep, for getting me in for this topic, which is so vital today, especially after the Air Chief spoke out his mind in a way. Incidentally, what he spoke is the truth. And while the program may be labeled Angry IAF, I think it should be Truthful IAF.
Right.
Because that's where the situation is. And if we go back in history, I think it's all boils down to the amount of money that is put in to get the squadrons up.
Right.
After the debacle of 1962, our defense budget as a percentage of GDP went up. And it actually reached almost 3.1 or 0.2% of the GDP, almost middle of 1984.
Right.
And that's the period when the Air Force was literally at its full strength almost, as fighter squadrons. Thereafter, there has been a reduction in the defense budget, and we now stand at 1.9% of the GDP, constant. So the issue that comes up is that for an operational man, who is the air chief, it worries him.
Yes.
And it has worried all the previous chiefs also. And in various different ways, they have expressed their dissatisfaction with the way HAL's production line has kept up with the IAF's requirement.
Right.
And as the air chief said yesterday at Bangalore, that we have not got a single Tejas Mark 1A, whereas we are supposed to have got how many? We are supposed to have got, as per our chart, between 2024 and 2029, we are supposed to get 83.
Right.
So we are now into 2025, and we are yet to get the first one. In fact, a very critical sentence which he said was that the Mark 1A, which
Yes.
is flying, he said that is actually not Mark 1A. By making a small change in the software or something,
Right.
it doesn't become 1A. It has to fly as a system, and we are still not there. That's worrying.
It's worrying indeed, Air Marshal Bahadur. I'm going to ask Air Marshal Chaudhary about this problem that this poses, that the Air Force's falling numbers. How do this impact our overall air power strategy, given the fact that it impacts not just the air battle, but also the battle on the ground and, of course, out at sea as well?
I think that's a very, very valid and an important and a very easily ignored point from our perception of national security, that we have always looked at the IAF as a simple service in itself, which has to just sort of fight other air forces. I'm sorry, the world has come a long way. I think the world over, there is no doubt in the role which air power plays in our national security. The problem has been in our perception, because, and justifiably so, I'm saying this justifiably so, that we have a continental bias in our mindsets simply because we have unresolved borders and
Yes.
a humongous unresolved border. So I understand this fully. But the nation has to understand that defending a nation's national security and sovereignty is just not on the borders alone. It's
Absolutely.
a matter of national security. So air power and offensive air power capability is a concern of national security and not the IAF, I'm afraid.
It's not just
That
an Air
is
Force problem, it's a
absolutely.
national problem, it's a national security problem. It affects the whole country. It could weaken all of India's defenses, not just in the air, but on the ground and in the sea as well. But Air Marshal Chaudhary, a quick follow-on question to you. The numbers that are being mentioned right now, the Air Force has a sanctioned strength of 42 squadrons, fighter squadrons. It is down to, we believe, less than 32 squadrons at present. Is the defense of India in peril given these low numbers, and these numbers could reduce over the next couple of years? Does it present a big problem for the Indian Air Force when it has to meet all of these requirements that are placed on it if war were
Most
to ever
certainly.
break?
Most certainly, Sandeep. Three quick points on this. First, numbers matter. Whatever you say, numbers do matter. There's a difference of the PLA, the Chinese Air Force, what it was with thousands of platforms earlier, legacy platforms. Look at the transformation. A majority of the Air Force is fourth and fifth generation today. So, though their numbers from their original Air Force size is reduced, but look at the capability increase. In our case, while we have inducted, modern platforms in the last couple of decades, fact of it is there is such a vast legacy backlog, and that we have not kept increasing the strength of our Air Force. And in fact, our base strength has been continuously reducing. So we have larger number of squadrons which are more capable today than let's say, the earlier days of squadrons of MiG-21s. But those numbers are also not nearly enough.
Right.
We have a semblance of an advantage even today against China in the northern sector simply for the fact that of two issues. China is fundamentally focused on Taiwan, and it has been slow in developing its infrastructure in Tibet. But Galwan and Doklam, when they saw the Air Force spinning up and bolstering India's military capability, and not just from a continental perspective, bolstering India's defensive capability, it realized the difference what an offensive air power will make to them, and they have stepped on the gas on developing infrastructure and deployments in Tibet. So this is a very rapidly closing window because the way our numbers are shrinking,
Yes.
and the way China is expanding in Tibet, and with the collusive partner of Pakistan from its air power. Do remember the strong air forces, which are totally integrated in their national and military strategy.
Yes.
So for us to be really, robust and resilient in our conventional deterrence, you have to up your air power capability, which I'm afraid has been ignored and reached a point where we are in a desperate crisis.
We're in a desperate crisis right now, Air Marshal Chaudhary, indeed. But AVM Bahadur, did the Air Force Chief actually say out in this private-public conversation? It was not a public conversation. It was a private conversation which just leaked out because of the media that was present there. Has he actually articulated what the Air Force has been saying behind closed doors for several years now, that you are basically unhappy with the state of things at HAL? There doesn't seem to be a lot of partnerships with HAL between, at one time you had the Indian Air Force heading the HAL. Is that the root cause of the issue here? The fact is that you're operating in silos. The Air Force really doesn't know what the HAL is doing and vice versa.
The point, Sandeep, is that every chief we know of, and both of us have worked in air headquarters, know that the problem has been conveyed to the ministry n number of times in writing.
Right.
It always happens that way. And many of the things that are talked about in the offices are not conveyed publicly. Now, this leaked out for whatever reason.
Yes.
But the point is, that's the sentiment, that's the reality.
Right.
And I haven't worked in the headquarters. I do know how sometimes desperate you are because, shall we say, the work culture or the ethos of making sure that timelines are met,
Right.
promises are met. Unfortunately, this has not happened. So, and hence we land up in such a situation. And just taking off from your previous question to Marshal Chaudhary, you know, it's the nation that fights the war. It's not the Air Force, the Army, or the
Yes.
Navy. Okay. So, if anything, I personally feel is the Defense Secretary who's in charge
Yes.
of, by the business rules, who's in charge of the security of the nation. He should be actually a worried man. Certainly the
Absolutely.
chiefs, but
Right.
it's the Defense Secretary who should be actually the worried man. And now we have a MOD committee that has been formed to look into the issues of IAF strength, correct? So I'm just wondering why just the Air Force? Because the wars will be fought integrated.
Yes.
So I'm sure we know what are the requirements of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. What are the issues in terms of synergy and in terms of equipment.
Right.
So just looking at the Air Force requirement, I personally feel that has been happening the last few decades of what the Air Force requires. It's well known.
Right. It's more, you know, a jointmanship. You need to look at the problem holistically rather than just an Air Force problem, Air Marshal Bahadur, as you just said. But Air Marshal Chaudhary, you know, I'm reading out the statement by the HAL chairman, Mrs. D.K. Sunil. He said that the delay which the Air Force chief mentioned is not simply attributable to laziness on part of the industry. He says there have been certain technical issues which have been sorted out, and the concern of the Air Chief is understandable, as he said. What could these technical issues be? We know that the engines which the LCA Mark 1 is powered by are American engines, and the GE has not been meeting deadlines as well. The GE 404 engines that were to come for the LCA Mark 1A have not been delivered. Could that be the main reason for the fact of this delay, that several years now we've not had the Mark 1A?
I think there are several reasons, but I think the most serious and endemic issue, which is really structural,
Yes.
is the fact that the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited is not committed into this whole game with the kind of seriousness it should. HAL has a role in national security as well. It is not just a business end of a factory which just produces products for business and public sale. The most serious customer has been
Yes.
the Indian Air Force for ages.
Yes.
And the Indian Air Force, I'm sorry, we've been painted enough number of times as a spoiler, so we take it on the chin. It's very frankly, we get denigrated at every point in time in the past, which has happened. So it's not a real shocker. But the fact is, the Indian Air Force has been speaking the truth, which I'm afraid was not given adequate cognizance of.
Right.
The fact of it is, we have stuck through with the HAL through thick and thin, through all the failures, through crashes,
Yes.
to missed deadlines. Okay, the fact of it is, there's not enough commitment from the HAL into the military aviation and India's military strength.
Right.
And that is what it should have been. Look at the other countries. Look at the Navy, where the Navy has managed to recover its program, indigenous program, because it has gone into a deep handshake with the naval shipbuilding industry.
Yes.
Whereas it is not just the Air Force. Air Force can't push its way into HAL. HAL has to accept Air Force with open arms if he wants to get serious
Right.
about meeting the deadlines.
Absolutely.
I'm
So
sorry.
you're pushing for a greater participation in of the Indian Air Force with the HAL. You need more partnership. You need more collaborations, like, as you mentioned, the Indian Navy has with the domestic shipbuilding yards. Would that solve a lot of the problems, you think?
I think first and foremost, I think the step which, the mention of the Defense Secretary came up, and I admire the fact that he's been able to admit finally that there is a problem with their procurement process. And I think when you start accepting our mistakes, that's the first step in improvement. I think the HAL today, when it says that, I would say it is not just laziness or whatever part of it. Where did that word laziness come in? So there has
Right.
been a sloth in the industry, I'm afraid. Let's be very honest about it. And if the HAL chairman is really, really serious
Yes.
in turning things around, then it has to look at it from a much deeper perspective. Stop over-promising. Stop
Yes.
overestimating your capabilities. Understand that niche capabilities need deep research and development. That
Yes.
you cannot go in alone with the deadlines and the timelines available to you now. You're already slipped behind.
Right. So this
So
problem
this
of
narrative-
over-promising and under-delivering is well made, Marshal Chaudhary, and it's been, of course, been discussed for several years now. But AVM Bahadur, what can we do to ensure that the state of things doesn't happen? Is it the fact that you have just a single fighter jet manufacturer and therefore you're putting all your eggs, all your indigenous fighter jet eggs into one basket? What is the alternative? Do you think we need to maybe create a second line of fighter jet manufacturers, say in the private sector, which possibly is one line of thinking that has been spoken about in recent years?
Yeah, I just come to that, Sandeep, but just to go back, I'm a little saddened by the statement of the HAL chairman. It's a problem. Actually, it should have been accepted,
Yes.
plain and simple. I mean, if you want to rattle out, I can rattle out n number of cases, the times when we've, just pulled a hair because timelines were not met.
Yes.
Okay, so just let's leave it at that. A bit disappointed with the HAL chairman's remarks. Okay, now you said, should the private line be created? Easier said than done, but it needs to be done. Because, when you're talking of a private line, of a private sector line or any aircraft line, you're looking at real estate, hangars, tools, jigs, skilled manpower.
Yes.
Okay.
The most important,
more
the skilled
importantly-
manpower. Yes.
And more importantly, the readiness to share your designs with the private sector. Hey, the private sector is as nationalistic as HAL or DRDO or ADA or the Air Force. Let's put it that way. Okay, so let's get that going. But we have been hearing this this talk about an alternate line coming up for ages now. Somebody has to push, and I agree with Air Marshal Chaudhary. It was so nice to hear the Defense Secretary say, we have a problem.
Yes.
That's the first step taken.
We have a problem indeed, and Air Marshal Chaudhary, with the problem you're looking at is falling numbers, and the Air Force seems to have a solution for it, which is the multi-role fighter aircraft project for 114 aircraft that are to be imported, which is of course the MMRCA project in a new avatar. You believe the MRFA is the solution, at least in the short term, for the Air Force's declining numbers?
The inflection point which we have reached, frankly, it is not just about, this is where it gets a little tricky. The moment we start talking about 114
Yes.
in numbers, that is a critical capability and inventory gap which has to be filled.
Right.
We should not mix this up with our fifth generation aspirations. This is one requirement. So don't make the mistake of clubbing in fifth generation with this. We have to get this 114. Now, who you want to get is a strategic choice. It's a decision. It is not just an Air Force's decision. Air Force's decision will rest on simply platform capability.
Right.
But the country of origin, what the offer comes along with this deal, with the production lines, what access to future niche technologies, joint production capabilities, the scalability of production, and amongst the other things which Marshal Bahadur very rightly pointed out, a very important aspect is modern day production lines with state-of-the-art digitized AI capabilities. So you can only scale up production with all these. So the point what I'm trying to make here is that we have to get this 114 with a partnership. There's no choice in this matter.
114 with a partnership, there's no choice in the matter. Air Marshal Bahadur, do you believe that this is the way forward? And given the fact that Prime Minister Modi is going to be in the United States a few hours from now, and there's talk of a fighter deal in the pipeline, do you believe that the Air Force's worries could be solved by this one-time buy of 114 medium-role fighter aircraft?
114 fighter aircraft, that's a huge amount of money.
Yes.
So I personally feel that as we've been reading in the media, the thing that is coming up next from the French side is the Rafales for the Navy, the maritime Rafale.
Yes.
The 114 thing, the contract or the project, I think the decision is yet to be taken. And I don't think anything will come from the Prime Minister's current visit to France. That's my feeling. But it has to be, the numbers are required. The Air Force gives the numbers required and the capability required. And thereafter, it's a political decision by the government of the day whom to give the contract to.
political decision by the government of the day, and it looks like that day is not very far off given the state of things with the Air Force and its falling squadron numbers. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Chaudhary, Air Marshal Bahadur, for joining us on this topic.